we're back in the saddle again with Mr. Darrell Skiles. He has a special guest, Galen Buntin, with him today, and we are very pleased to have Darrell in today. Darrell, it's been like 2 weeks.
It's been 2 weeks. Yes, we're here. This is the South Central Regional Stockyards, Ag News, Market Update, and what have you. And it's good to be here. Spring is really busted out in full force now. And
you brought a special guest. You got Gatlin to come in all the way from Steelville. Good to have you, my friend.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yes, I'm glad to have Gatlin come in. Gatlin is, correct me if I'm wrong here, but is the agronomy specialist for the University of Missouri Extension. Works based out of Steelville, Crawford County Extension office. And so with spring busting out, turkeys gobbling, fertilizer being spread, and the cattle market's good. Cattle market's great, actually, right now, the best it's been in a long time. So everything's looking up. But now is the time with spring, as we say, spring busting out and grass is growing. Not only is grass growing, but weeds and brush are budding out, growing and stuff. I thought it'd be a good time if Gatlin could maybe visit with us about how to address some of these things that kind of take away from our grass production and take away from our cattle operations.
Very good.
Weeds and brush and stuff. So Gatlin, I'll just leave it up to you to kind of just dive right in.
Yeah, so I mean, spring is really important to be thinking about not just fertilizing, but thinking about all these things that we're going to deal with all summer long. And for the most part, that's weeds, that's brush, and we need to be timely with it. You know, some things are needing to be sprayed right now, and sometimes that's a little difficult to do as we're handling everything else in the spring. Buckbrush is really what we need to get on right now, but it is it's one that once it gets away from us, once it gets that waxy layer on its leaves, it's pretty hard to get herbicide in it. So if we've got some buckbrush problems, really that second week in April is about perfect. But, you know, we can think about other things as well, whether that be using impregnated fertilizer, whether that be just getting the sprayer ready and ready to go when we start seeing weeds. There's a lot of chores to be done yet to get ready to control weeds this summer.
With all the extra rain we had early on this year, and obviously we started seeing some things green up. We got nice and warm in February. March kind of took a little turn, got a little bit cooler. But we've had excessive winds, and you're talking about spraying, and a lot of people, you cannot spray in 30, 40-mile-an-hour gust winds. And thusly, you have to wait, don't you, for the conditions to be right?
Yeah, really the rule of thumb is 10 miles an hour or less. And, you know, if it's ever in doubt, just wait till it's better. It's better to have a good spray day than accidentally spray the neighbor or have it drift and move where you don't want it.
Or come back on you.
Yeah.
And make sure you're wearing the proper mask and everything else.
Yeah, and your PPE is very important. Yes. You know, especially if you're spraying from an open station tractor or whatever. It's pretty easy to get covered, especially if we're in high winds. So this spring has not been a good spray spring. Kind of good Nebraska spray weather.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're talking about buckbrush is one of them that right now is leafing out. Rose bushes too, for that matter, and a lot of different things. But what are some of the things that you would recommend people think about using? And I mean, there's a lot of different stuff available at our various farm supply stores and things. But when you're looking at buckbrush and things, what if you were going to spray a bunch of buckbrush on your farm? What would you be looking at trying to use, rates and some things like that?
Yeah, so buckbrush is a pretty simple one if we get on it in time. So usually 2,4-D alone will work pretty well. 2,4-D plus dicamba works even better. Sometimes it's a little harder to get dicamba, but using that mix in equal parts is pretty effective on it. When we start to think of other things, if we're just coming up with a general brush spray right now, trying to get the buckbrush, trying to get any of the rose bushes that are coming out, using something with triclopyr that's Remedy is good. So either Remedy or Crossbow are good options for just a general spray.
Yeah, good. It's there's all manner. Okay, and when we're doing this, we also, a lot of times people will have some of the woodier things and odds and ends stuff, like some of the oaks and different sprouts and different stuff like that. Some of those things I know Crossbow Remedy does pretty good on some of those as well, correct?
Yeah, it works really good on most of our sprouts and stuff. If you can keep them under 4 feet tall, it's a little more effective.
Yeah.
The issue with any of our tree sprouts right now is they're moving so much sap, sometimes they can just push that herbicide right out. Mm-hmm. So usually if we're going after oaks or hickories or anything like that, it's better to wait till May. or even a little bit after, just so the herbicide can get taken up.
Interesting. I had never heard that, thought about that.
I didn't either until I was talking to a forester that was trying to do hack and squirt applications where they go in and cut it with a hatchet and spray it in. They will not do it in April till about the end of May. And he said it just will not kill it. And they're using pretty undiluted amounts of chemicals.
Right. Strong stuff.
Yeah.
But it pushes out because so much sap moving up.
Yep.
Interesting. What about thistles? Thistles seems like more and more have become an invasive problem, and just coming in and spraying. And then talk about the relationship as far as we're spraying this stuff, the buckbrush, rose bushes, whatever, thistles, what have you, and the deal of with their clovers. I mean, everybody, we want clover in our pasture and so on, but there's a bit of antagonism there of trying to control one and keeping the other. It's hard to do.
Yeah, so with our thistles, it's we've got 6 species in the state. 2 or 3 are native, and that's what most people deal with. It's either tall thistle or pasture thistle. And being native, there's some benefits and some detriments with that. The benefits are they're not that aggressive. The detriment is they're pretty adaptable.
Yeah.
But it's not until we get into things like Canada thistle, musk thistle, and bull thistle that I really worry a lot about them.
Yeah.
And if you've got musk thistle, that's a pretty aggressive one. But they're all controlled the same way. And the key to that is we want to get them when they're small. So they're a biennial. So that first year, they stay pretty low growing to the ground, and it's pretty easy to kill them at that time. You can do it with just a 2,4-D application.
Kind of what they call the rosette.
Yeah, that rosette stage where they're growing out along the ground. They're not bolted yet. But by the time you see them and you notice them that second year, it's pretty hard to kill. Usually we've got to use some more aggressive chemistries, whether that be Remedy, whether that be Graze on Next or something like that. With that being said, if we can break that cycle, keep them from going seed for several years, usually we'll see that diminish. Now, they do blow in the wind some, so you do see movement, whether that's, from one field to the next, or they can move several miles, actually. So there's always a chance one's going to show up.
Right. If there's a farm southwest of you with a bad thistle problem,
you're going to have them.
You're going to probably have thistles. Yeah.
Are the different species easily identifiable, or is that something that somebody like you would have to come out and say you have this species or that species?
A little bit of both. Once you're told how to identify them, they're pretty simple, but they all kind of look similar.
They're thistle.
Yeah. So our native thistles, tall and pasture thistle, they're dark green on the top of the leaves. The underside is kind of a silver white. So that's the easiest way to tell those apart from our introduced ones. Now, there's some other things that you can separate the two of those. That's not that important. When it comes to bull thistle, it's pretty big and spiny looking, but it's covered in short hairs.
Nice.
So that's our hairy one.
Kind of bushed out.
Yeah.
Really thick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
nasty booger.
Yes. Yeah. You know it's something bad.
Yeah.
Musk thistle, very smooth leaves, and they're kind of a minty green. And usually they'll be covered in really short spines on the leaf edges. And they're a lot more aggressive growing. Even when they're in the rosette stage, usually they're a lot bigger. Canada thistle, it's our only perennial thistle. So that one, usually it's shorter, has a lot smaller blooms. It can bloom at any time of the year. And it spreads by rhizomes, kind of like Johnson grass. So with it, it's a really hard one to kill. The rest of them, if you get it in that rosette stage, everything's fine. Canada thistle, we really want it to be blooming. And the good thing with Canada thistle, we're really far south for it. It's more of a northern species. Within 25, 30 miles of Salem, I can think of one place that has it. And it's kind of a weird, special cold spot, and it kind of handles that. But you probably don't have Canada thistle, and that's usually what I get calls on, is they're worried about it.
Yeah, the bull and the musk thistles are the two worst ones that we end up with.
Yep.
The musk thistle especially, because they'll really spread fast. Once they go to seed on your place, then you're going to... We've got a place that we ended up with what I called a nest of them. And so every year I find myself trekking out there just week or two before Memorial Day and for the couple of weeks after, scouring the thing real good for any of those, because they stick up. They call it nodding thistle, and there's another name for it. Have a real pretty, beautiful purple head, pokes up and high, and then there'll be some other blooms on down on the sprout. But I found taking a long hatchet axe that I've got and basically chopping them off at the ground, digging them out.
Yeah.
And that's and we've made headway. I think I pretty well got ahead of them, but they came in from neighboring property. I know that. I mean, we didn't have any, and then all of a sudden found a nest of them in the valley.
Yeah, and musk thistle is the most prolific seed producer.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so they bloom repeatedly, and they'll make several hundred seeds per bloom.
Yep.
So they're definitely one to get ahead
once
of.
they turn brown and go to seed, then and start dropping, then I'm pretty religious about when I chop them, even if they've got a purple bloom, I'll pull them blooms off, put them in a sack, and make sure that thing gets burned. Yeah. And because they're at that point, they can just about go ahead and mature after you've killed it. And from what I understand, so they're bad. And I just got some bull thistle too, but otherwise the field thistles are just, I think aesthetically, and they're just plain irritating to see.
More than anything,
there,
yes,
but still, I've watched, the cow, they're not going to hurt your grazing all that bad, but a cow still isn't going to want to get her nose right up against one thing. So it's just something to try to deal with. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about something that's really kind of came on in the last few years, is the fertilizer impregnated with the herbicide. And what are some options there that you know of that are available here from our local fertilizer dealers? I know there's some available, and some people have used it and had great results. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's a great tool if we were going to spray that area anyway. I caution people, if they weren't going to spray and there's no real weed problem, it's probably not worth adding in, because the amount that you're going to take out of the system between killing your clover or some of those more beneficial weeds that your cows are probably eating anyway.
It will take out your red clover, Medina, white clover, any clovers, period, right?
Yep. So Grazon Next, Duracor, and Chaparral are all three labeled for impregnating on fertilizer, and aminopyrrolid is that primary chemical in it, and that's probably the best thing we've ever come up with to kill clover. So with that, it's a great tool if, time is limited or we don't have a good spray season. We can spread fertilizer when the wind's blowing, and we're not going to worry about that drifting onto the neighbor or something. But it's a great tool. However, I think maybe we need to look at where is its place, because I see a lot of people that are putting it on that really have no need to put it on. And then sometimes you do see production get lower that first couple of years.
Can you tell me roughly what is the extra cost per acre that a person's looking at when they're putting some herbicide on with the fertilizer? Just round figure.
So I'm not for sure on what that is, but it's probably going to be somewhere around that extra $7 to $12 range, depending on the product. Yeah. Duracor is probably the most expensive, just because it's the newest chemical.
Now, will that go ahead and be effective against buckbrush then, if you would be trying to do that?
It won't. So
I didn't think it would, but I had to ask.
That's kind of one of the limitations with it, is all of that action that it has on weeds is through root uptake. So for our brushy species, and even on some of our harder to kill perennials, think of ironweed and things like that, you're losing about 15 to 20% of your control anyway, but on our brush, we really can't rely on it to effectively kill it.
It would have to get a good bit of that down deeper, I would think, in order to be able to work up through that root. Whereas when you're spraying it, you're getting it directly on the leaf, and it's sucking it directly into the plant.
Exactly.
Taking it down to the roots, basically.
And the other thing is, these are all mixes of chemicals. So, Chaparral is aminopyrrolid and metsulfuron. Grazon Next is aminopyrrolid and 2,4-D, and Duracor is aminopyrrolid and one that I can't pronounce. But it is only the aminopyrrolid is working. The other ones can't be taken up by the roots. So if we think of spraying it as a foliar spray, you're having two chemicals work in that plant versus one if we're just using the fertilizer.
Well, let me ask this then. What would be some species that you see in your pastures and your fields that would jump out at you that you think, I think I'll put some impregnated fertilizer
Yeah.
on there and go after this, and knowing that you're going to wipe out your clover.
Yeah.
But let's make a caveat there. In reality, it really isn't too hard to get clover back in our fields.
If we wait the residual period on these at 18 months, then we can go right back in.
Year and a half, is that what it is?
Yep.
Roughly a year and a half. So if you do it this spring, you're probably
looking at spring of 25 when you
right.
cross seed.
Don't worry about trying to come in and seed, because you're still going to have some residual effect of that in the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
But weeds that, I think really are fitting for this, any of the annual weeds, so ragweeds, cockleburrs, it does have pretty good effect on thistles, especially in that rosette stage.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a benefit we get, is sometimes they're hard to see, but if we're putting out that application, they're going to get taken care of. Some other things that are kind of marginal, goldenrods, when it gets into perennials, it's kind of iffy. You got to have everything just right.
Yeah, and timing kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask about that timing. Okay, I read a deal the other day that they actually, when using the impregnated fertilizer, particularly because of thistles, ragweed, and some other things, they like putting it on the first. Most of us try to get our fertilizer on our pasture and hay ground and stuff in April. Okay, I mean that's just it's written in stone somewhere that you got
Farmer's Almanac.
Yeah, it's got to be done.
Fact.
But I did read where somebody that was using this quite a bit and were very happy with the result, but they were putting it on the first couple of weeks of May sometime because they felt like it was getting it on and getting it down in there more at the timing when those things that they were after were actually fixing to really take off and suck it up, and that it really, they felt, and that was a little ways west of us here where that was being done. But I wondered, would that apply on some of these things with the thistles?
Yeah, from the herbicides point of view, it's better. From growing a cool season grass, that fertilizer point of view, we've kind of missed our window.
Yeah,
but
the best window for sure.
Yeah, we're relying on that root uptake. We're relying on the residual action of it. So the later you can apply it within reason, the more effective it is on those weeds. Just because if we put it on last week of March, there's probably not enough residual there from that herbicide to last until things start to come up at the end of May.
On those targeted weeds.
Yeah, on the weeds that you're going after. Now, you're probably going to get that first flush of things. Right now, every pasture has ragweed an inch tall in it, so you probably would have taken those out. But you're not going to get the cocklebur that are not going to come up till, June.
Right. They're more of a warmer weather.
Yeah, they'll start coming up right now, but they really don't get that big flush till May and June.
Interesting.
Now, to build on that, there has been a little bit of research done at the University of Missouri where they looked at fall applications. So, that's a common practice for people that are needing fall fertilizer or fall pasture or stockpiling. And they used that, put it onto various weeds, and really was not that effective. So all of those plants were fairly big.
Right.
We kind of missed that window of opportunity when things were 4 inches tall and were good if we were going to spray them. So if we're thinking 15 to 20% loss of control compared to foliar spray in the spring, it was about 30 to 40 when we did an August application. And a lot of that's just weed size.
Right. Well, and so many times there in the fall, the rainfall's not as predictable and that
exactly
things is what you'd like to have, and it's got to have some rain.
Yeah, it's got to have a quarter inch of rainfall within 30 days to work.
Get it down, get it in the ground.
Yep.
If it's not in the ground, it's just going to lay there. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, it sounds like anybody that is got land that they want to treat, they really have to have a strategy in place. You got to be looking at the weather. You got to be following different things. You got to actually be walking your field to see what is coming up, what's not coming up, and then address those as needed, right? So then they can contact you and say, okay, I've seen these problems. Where should I go from here? Because you look at them. Right now we got a little bit of rain coming in Saturday night, but then there's no rain really predicted until for another week. Somebody might say, well, if I want to get this down, when do I need to get down? You're saying like 10 minutes?
Yeah. That's the thing. We do need to kind of have a longer look at things, have a strategy for what we're doing, whether that's, I take a side-by-side ride and I go through all my pastures and I look at things every couple of weeks. That's a good way to start. I'd also love to see people actually just kind of walking around, looking down, seeing what's there, because you're driving by at 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
By the time you see the weed, it's
Right.
established.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then just being timely with having everything ready to go, so that if you do see that problem, you can address it. Most of us, if we've got a sprayer, we put it away. We don't think about it till we need it. But putting it away where it's ready to go at a moment's notice is very helpful.
I've been working on getting mine ready. It's not ready at a moment's notice.
Yeah, I understand it.
Matter of fact, I pretty much got to overhaul it right now, but
Yeah.
within a day or two, I can have it ready to spray.
Is there any particular way by taking a soil test that people could find out if their soil is more prone to cocklebur or things of that nature? Is there certain ingredients in the soil that those weeds like more than others?
Yeah. So part of that's actually what I did my master's work on.
Oh, my God, I asked.
Yeah.
There you go.
Like you found my thesis. So on pasture weeds, there's a lot of correlation between the absence of a certain nutrient and the presence of weeds. So if we think about something like calcium, usually that means that we're going to see more foxtail species. Other things, ragweed. Ragweed is adaptable. It didn't really follow anything in particular. We saw more ironweed whenever we had low copper. So there are some relationships there, and sometimes it's very minuscule. A part per million of a given nutrient in the soil might mean 200 more plants of whatever weed it is per acre. Now, fleshing that out, that's all averages. It kind of gets lost in the statistics. But, there are other things that are very reliable. Broom sedge shows up when you have low lime and low phosphorus. So that's one. If we start to see broom sedge and we take a soil test, it's almost always going to say we need those.
So you probably don't even need to take a soil test. You can look at it and say, I have a good idea what your problem is.
Yes.
Even before you even go take the plug.
Yeah, on something like broom sedge for sure.
Yeah. I was saying, that's interesting to me because, you don't think about that when people go and they say, well, I'm going to go fertilize this area. I'm going to go use a herbicide on this area. You may not need it for that particular weed you're spraying it for.
Exactly. And that's the other thing, a lot of our weed issues, we can relate back to the soil in some way. If we have that soil optimal to grow whatever forage we want, that forage usually will outcompete our weeds. It's just that our weeds are such, optimist, if you will, that they're going to grow even when the pH is 4 and there's half a pound of phosphorus per acre. Some weed is still going to grow. The fescue, the orchard grass you want is not.
Yeah, you get your pH and your other levels up, the broom sedge will pretty much disappear.
Yeah.
If you got any grass at all, the grass will overtake, and the broom sedge just doesn't like sweet ground. It doesn't seem like. Yeah, but although I do know though that actually I've known some folks who've actually done a little bit of managing around the broom sedge and trying to keep it down short and grazing it, and cattle will do well on it.
Yeah, it's an excellent forage if you use it when it needs to be used.
Just not going to get a lot of tonnage per acre and so on, and probably not financially hardly worthwhile for managing that way. But it's interesting to do, and sometimes there's times of the year that you might be tickled to death to have it.
No, there's a few producers I work with in Crawford County are they manage some ridge tops that are hard to do anything else with just for broom sedge, and they'll summer cattle up there, and they do just as good on it as any other warm season grass. So on those places you can't get a fertilizer buggy, a match is pretty easy to keep your broom sedge.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Well. Interesting, Gatlin. I appreciate the info. Anything else people need to be thinking about as far as right now and this time of year and going in their hay fields even and stuff?
Yeah, I think as far as hay and everything, just be thinking earlier is better if we can get it in with the weather. It's always a race between the weather and maturity on our cool season grasses. So if you're one of those folks that does it by the calendar, consider doing it by the weather. That's a little oversimplified, but I see a lot of folks that they cut it June 1st when they probably could have done it 2 weeks earlier and gotten some very high quality hay.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to the impregnated fertilizer with it, would you see that? So mostly what I've heard is people were putting it in with the fertilizer on their pasture ground and things.
Mm-hmm.
Would you see that being worthwhile? Perhaps I know it would depend on what some of the weeds are and things there, but when you're spreading fertilizer for your hay ground, you're getting up more 350, 400 pounds to the acre, so on, of fertilizer to really get that hay production. But would you see possibly some advantage, or would there be some where you were putting at those rates there, probably not going to get as much advantage maybe on the impregnated fertilizer, or would you? I just occurred to me,
you'll probably get a little bit of an advantage. So the minimum that you have to apply is 200 pounds of bulk product per acre, just so you get good coverage.
Sure.
So the more pounds per acre you get, the more likely you are to have that fertilizer prill with some herbicide on it hit every inch of soil.
Okay.
So you have a little better coverage. It's just like raising your gallons per acre out of a sprayer up. If you were spraying at 10 and then you started spraying at 20, you'll have better coverage. So kind of the same thought there. Now with our hay, we can put that on hay. As of last year, you can sell that hay with a supplemental label.
That was my next question. Yeah. What are the restrictions?
So the thing with any of these that have aminopyrrolid, there can be a residual in the hay itself. So you need to be mindful of where that's going, where you're feeding it, what it's being used for if you do sell it. And if you do go to sell it, there's some various rules you have to follow to be in accordance with that supplemental label. But having it just written down that both parties understand this has a residual chemical in it is good. Because the last thing you want is, sell somebody some hay, they go mulch their garden, and then they've got a garden that will only grow sweet corn for a couple of years.
Generally, it's going to that hay is going to get fed on some other pasture ground that somebody would be tickled to death if it did do something to help with the weeds. But otherwise, why?
Yeah, and that's something else to think of is the manure out of the animals that have grazed this area, or the hay that they've eaten. That can potentially have a little bit of this in there. So sometimes you'll see some clover death or some weeds start to twist around where you fed or where they've defecated.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of stuff, Gavin. A lot of stuff. And you learn new things come out all the time, especially with the new chemicals. And so this is not something where you can stand pat on something and say, hey, I've used this for 10 years. I know what it does. You may not know what it does anymore because the government changes everything, right? Yeah, because labels change. Every 10 to 15 years or so, they have to renew them to be in accordance with the EPA. And a lot of that's just economics. Sometimes there'll be changes that are based on, okay, it volatilizes, it moves, so we change it. But other times, it costs about $10 to $12 million to keep a crop on the label. So if we think of the Graze On Next label says, you can put it on cool season pastures, warm season pastures. There's money to keep that label. So sometimes it's just not economical to do that. So they'll drop something. A good example of that is Buterac 200. So that's 2,4-DB. You can put it on alfalfa, soybeans, stuff like that. If you go back 2 labels ago, you could put it on clover legally. But the clover market wasn't big enough to pay for it to continue to be on the label, so they dropped it. It's not that it started to kill clover. It's just the dollars and cents weren't there. Not profitable enough. That's the bottom line.
So that's why it's always important to read that label. Even if you've used a product for 10 years, that label might change. So if it changes, you're just out of luck. If what you were using, you can't use it anymore.
Interesting.
There you go.
By the way, for folks who don't know, Gatlin is now pretty much the manager running things down at the University of Missouri Wardak Farm down at Cook Station. Many folks are familiar with it, have been down there.
Spare time job.
Yeah. So
I moonlight as an agronomist now.
Well, my point in this is Gatlin doesn't. I mean, he knows this stuff, but he gets a lot of opportunity to put all of his knowledge in different areas here to write directly to practical use there at the farm and out here with folks putting it. So I do appreciate the work you're doing down there and appreciate the Wardak Farm. I'm on that advisory committee, and it's a pretty neat place. If people haven't had a chance to see it sometime, why be aware and watch there for when we have field days and things. That it's a neat place to come down to and see the work that's going on with extension.
Yeah, first Friday of October every year is our field day, so get that on your calendar and be glad to see anyone there.
Yeah, Real good. And otherwise, though, you hang out at the extension office at Crawford County, right? But you serve this whole area.
Yeah,
right?
so I serve Crawford, Dent, and Phelps County.
Okay.
And if people want to get in touch with me, it's easiest to call the Crawford County Extension office. I can always take a call from there, but when I'm out at Wardak, it's kind of Wardak time.
Cell service isn't real good out
there. No. But if they're interested in getting in touch with me, they can call the Crawford County office at 573-775-2135. Might take me a day to get back to you, but we'll get back to you as quick as I can.
Yeah. Yep. Real good.
Besides the first day in October, the first Friday in October, do we have any other things coming up? But Wardak, I think there's a couple other classes coming up, right?
Yeah, so next Friday, April the 21st, we have a freeze branding workshop. The registration for that is actually handled through the Washington County office, but that will go through some classwork, go through the history of branding, kind of the legal sides of it, the requirements for the state. Rachel Hopkins is going to lead that, and she's going to go through some of the stuff on how you submit to the state to have your brand approved and registered. And then we'll have a hands-on portion where we're actually cold branding, freeze branding all the animals there at the Wardak herd that haven't been branded yet. So it's a pretty interesting process if you've never seen it. Involves some dry ice and some methanol, and it's a very effective way to ID your cattle, whether it's working them or, provide some theft deterrent if you've got an approved registered brand.
Very good.
Yep.
Very good. That's next week.
Yep.
Let's hear in a hurry. Is there a date they have to register by?
Oh,
You know that off the
that's
top
a
of your
Rachel
head?
question, but I think,
It's a Rachel question.
I think they need to register by next Wednesday, and that'll be through that the Washington County office, and that's 573-438. Go to the extension website.
There you go. Or you can call your local extension.
Yeah, call your local extension.
3196, and they can send you over there.
They can handle it.
Yeah, they can get you over there. Very good. All right. So it's been a pleasure to have you in. I finally get a chance to meet Gatlin. I talked to him many times on the phone.
Yeah, very glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad that you can make it in.
Yeah, Gatlin, I appreciate you coming in. I just felt it was a good time to kind of highlight on this, get people. Most folks, or a lot of folks are kind of like me. We end up a couple of weeks or a month behind the curve on when we should have been working on some of this brush stuff, but that happens. But as a matter of fact, when we leave here, Gatlin's going to go with me out to look at a brush problem that I've got, give me some ideas what might be the best mix of things I might use to try to get on top of the thing a little bit. Because this stuff isn't cheap, so you might as well make sure what you're using will address the issue. Some things will address some weeds and brush, and others will address some others better. So.
Well, like we talk about, though, Darrell, all that, it's not cheap, but it's an investment in your property. It's an investment into your livestock, investment into the feed that you're going to have to use. I mean, everything that you do to provide you with more acres of possible food for your cattle, that's an investment.
There you go. That's
right. And it becomes a big investment.
That's right. And it can be a great improvement to your ground and to the grass and forage that you're providing to the animals, and that's the whole point.
So very good.
Okay. Real good.
Speaking of markets, what can you tell us a little bit about the market? You said they've been good.
The market
you said. Really good.
Well, the market is, as we talked about last time, the cattle market has picked up a good bit. The fat cattle market is much better. Now I say fat cattle market. The finished cattle market across the country is much better than it's been in years. It wasn't that long ago that they'd be hoping to get $1.20 a pound for some of these finished steers, and now they're bumping up there at $1.80 and better in some parts of the country. And I heard a report last week of some finished steers that left the lot that brought right at $3,000 a head. And that was a good number of them to go to some packers. So that trickles on down. The feeder cattle futures have been good, and South Central this past week we had about 1,100 and some head. And again, just going off the market report that the USDA, Missouri Department of Agriculture market report put together, they called the feeder steers $4 to $10 higher than what they had been the previous week. Called feeder heifers under 600 pounds $12 to $18 a hundred higher. That's so we're getting up in some prices that we might be reaching record levels if they're not record levels. But just as for an example, and I'll just pull out a couple here because we could go all through. But just for an example, in some medium large number one steers, 535 pounds that were unweaned, and it's just 9 head. It's not a pot load. 535 pounds, bringing 226 a pound. Now, right here, though, was another 22 head, 530 pounds, that brought 266 a pound. Now, the note with that was that's 40 cents a pound difference. And again, we talked about this a little bit before. That was some value-added cattle. And I can tell you those cattle were weaned, probably had 2 rounds of all the respiratory shots and so forth, but otherwise very similar cattle, just the biggest difference being whether they were weaned or not, and with a good health program behind them. That's about as big a spread as I've seen there, but many times what we call, and I'll be talking about this every time we probably talk about markets, and whether you're talking about our market or where it generally there's generally a pretty good premium to be had for weaning those cattle and getting a health program in them. But that gives you an idea right there on those cattle with 630-pound cattle. Again, or here's some 650-pound cattle at 224 a pound. So the market's pretty good, and that's just a reflection of numbers out there. Feeder heifers, and again, looking back here, you had some 455-pound heifers value added at $2.54 a pound. And some very similar that weren't weaned, value added, were at $2.45. So you had right at 9, almost 10 cents a pound difference there. But at any rate, the feeder calf market is very good. It's kind of an in-between time right now. We don't really have we're actually just starting to get into the runs of fall-born calves from last year coming to the market. Some of them have been weaned, some haven't been. We're going to have a really good sale this week of several strings of really nice fall-born cattle, calves, be coming in, and actually from here on through the middle part of June until it gets real hot, we got several specials at South Central Regional Stockyards for some real nice strings of good fall-born calves. If you're looking to sell some calves, it's going to be a good time to do it here over the next month or month and a half. Or if you're looking to buy some to turn out on grass, people got grass to graze. There'll be some awfully good cattle that can be bought, and some cattle that have been weaned and got a health program behind them as well. If you're in a position to go ahead and take some balling calves and put them in the lot and wean them, and then get some vaccinations in them, there'll be several of them that'll be available. You can generally sell unweaned calves this time of year with a little bit less of a discount than you're going to in the fall. In October, November, it's just a pretty tough market on those unweaned cattle, because those unweaned cattle that time of year tend to get sick just a little bit worse. So anyway, but again, that's I just did want to highlight that on that value-added thing. And and I will mention too, when we're talking about the value-added at South Central Stockyards, we got three tag programs for cattle that if people want to be thinking about, and if they're going to sell calves right off the cows, home-raised calves, and they want to give 1 round of shots but sell them unweaned, we've got what we call the green tag starback program. We'll supply the tags, and they just require a minimum vaccinations of IBR, BVD, PI3, BRSV is usually 1 shot. Pasteurella pneumonia shot is a second one, and then 7-way blackleg, and usually 7-way blackleg with Haemophilus somnus. Sometimes you'll have the somnus included, one of those others, but 3 or 4 vaccinations, and then the calves need to be castrated, dehorned, treated for external parasites when they're getting the shots, and those heifers need to be guaranteed open, and that's kind of a big deal. If people can get their bull pulled away from the cattle so that those young heifers don't get bred, it's always a plus. If you're going to wean your calves, keep them around, you're going to probably want to give them at least 2 rounds of the shots. The first round of the killed vaccine, give them a second round of, and again, it's all that same vaccinations, but 3 to 6 weeks later, after you've weaned calves or after you've given them that first round of shots, give them this will be a modified live vaccination for IBR, BVD, PI3, BRSV. That's the modified live. Then the Pasteurella pneumonia, again, 7-way blackleg and Haemophilus somnus. The only requirement on them is when they sell with that red starback tag is that those calves be guaranteed that they've been weaned at least 30 days and all been dehorned or tipped. And again, the heifer's guaranteed open and all the calves dewormed and so forth. So anyway, did want to mention that, but the market is very good. We're in a good position as far as all across the country, as far as numbers. cattle out there with the drought took a lot of cows out of production. A lot of cows went to slaughter the last year or so. Going to be a while before, and some areas of the country are still suffering from some drought and issues. So we're pretty fortunate here in our part of the country in Missouri. The whey cow market, though, just if you're just selling whey cows and these old whey cows, talking about slaughter cows, you're talking about the high dressing cows. Big old high dressing cows will bring $1 better. We're looking at $1 from 96 to $1.03 on some high dressing cows. You take a big cow, bring a lot of dollars just for slaughter. That's what they call the breakers. The boning cows are more in that they'll sell in that 88 to 90 or 88 to $1 range on cows, in that 1,000 to 1,300 pound cows. And then cows that are a little thinner, leaner cows, still bringing those mid 70s up to $90 for those even thinner cows. So there's just great demand for the beef out there in the market in general. The bred cow market, of course, is good as more and more now as grass gets here, more and more people looking for good bred cows. And the bred cow market, you can get $1,200, $1,500, $1,600 for good bred cows, and had a few pairs, but we had a set of they were nice and young, but they were really, really thin. Thin, young cows that had a pretty tough winter, and had some decent calves on them there, and they were bringing about $1,500 a pair. But as I said, they were very thin fleshed. Probably going to have to take them home and get the calves off, and then try to get them heifers bred, because I doubt, as thin as they were, I doubt that they'd bred, and they hadn't even been checked. So anyway, otherwise some better pairs, big pairs, older cows, 5 to 8, looking $1,500, $1,700, $1,800 a pair. So if a person was thinking about even getting out of the cow business finally, why, it'd probably be a good time to think about that here, and probably will be for the next couple or 3, hopefully 4 or 5 years. But we have a way of producing ourselves into a market problem down the road. But we're in pretty good shape here for a couple of 3 or 4 years, I think. So anyway, we'll be, as I said, we'll be having a special sale this week. Anybody's thinking about moving calves or anything, or some cows, or needing some, why, you can give me a call, and my number is 573-308-5415, or call the barn at 573-422-3305, and Dave Patton or Ross or Bill Patton, those are the folks that own the barn, and good guys. They'd be happy to come down, or I'll get them down here on the farm to take a look at what you got and talk about what your marketing options might be, or what you need, and take care of you. But otherwise, if I can help you, I will. I'm always up there during the sale, help get your cattle out, get them moved, and do whatever we need to do. My only goal is just to try to help folks down here get a little more bang for their buck, and get a few more dollars in the pockets down here.
Little knowledge never hurts anything, does it? Even when you kind of go with a master.
There you go.
Or should we say doctorate?
No. Didn't have the patience for that.
Didn't have the patience for that. I didn't know. That's a lot of work. Anyway, we want to thank Darrell, and want to thank Gatlin for coming in. Appreciate it. Spending some time with us, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with our next program.
I guess we're looking at probably again the second Friday, and
you're looking at April 28th, as far as I can see.
Yeah, well, we just might get back here April 28th.
Well, why not?
Second, fourth. Yeah, there we go. I'm on track now.
Let's just count on it.
Yeah, we'll be back April 28th with another report from South Central Regional Stockyards. And who knows, we might have another special guest on. But at any rate, we'll get back again and visit about the markets and what's happening and so forth and so on. In the meantime, turkey season starts Monday. Don't want to forget that.
Nope.
Yep.
I'd love to be turkey hunting Monday, but I understand I got to help a guy get some cattle moved.
There you go.
Duty calls.
Duty calls.
So that's what we'll be doing. But at any rate, it's a great time of year right now. I love this time of year. I love to deer hunt, but I'd rather turkey hunt. The problem always comes for me. Turkey season is about the time turkey season is in. Everything else needs to be done. You've been thinking all winter about all the stuff you're going to get done when it gets to where you can, and then here we are. My turkey hunting always seems to take a back seat. At least deer season is usually kind of at a time when I can spend a little more time in the deer stand. But hard to beat turkey season, and hard to beat this time of year down here in the Ozarks, down here in God's country. So anyway, if I can help you anything, moving cattle, operating, marketing your cattle, or if you want to buy some cattle or whatever, or you want to buy some cows, give a shout. I'm always available, 573-308-5415, or call South Central Regional Stockyards at 422-3305. Otherwise, we will be back here in a couple of weeks, Dan.